Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story is one that proves you should never judge someone by the clothes they wear, the car they drive, or the balance you think they have in their bank account. Because sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the one holding the greatest secret of all. And trust me, the ending of this story left everyone speechless. It was a cold Friday afternoon in downtown Chicago. Rain tapped softly against the giant glass windows of First National Bank, one of the most luxurious private banks in the city. The marble floors sparkled under golden lights, and expensive perfume mixed with the smell of fresh coffee in the air. People in designer suits walked confidently across the lobby while employees smiled politely at wealthy clients carrying black credit cards and luxury watches worth more than most people's yearly salaries. Near the entrance, a woman slowly stepped inside holding an old brown purse tightly against her chest. Her shoes were worn out. Her coat looked at least 10 years old. And her silver hair was slightly wet from the rain. Most people barely noticed her. But some did. And when they looked at her, they looked away just as quickly. The woman quietly approached the customer service desk. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I just want to see my balance." The young receptionist glanced up from her computer for half a second before forcing a fake smile. "Do you have an appointment, ma'am?" The old woman shook her head. "No, dear. I only need to check how much money is in my account." The receptionist sighed internally. She had seen this type before. People who came into luxury banks hoping to ask for favors, small loans, or sometimes simply to escape the rain. "Can I have your account card?" she asked. The woman carefully opened her purse and handed over a faded debit card. The receptionist took one look at the card and almost laughed. It was old. Very old. She typed the account number lazily into the system. But before the screen fully loaded, a loud voice interrupted nearby. Well, this is why the line is so slow." Everyone turned. A tall man in an expensive navy blue suit walked toward the desk. His shoes shined like mirrors. A gold watch sparkled on his wrist. His name was Richard Coleman, a millionaire real estate investor, and one of the bank's VIP clients. Employees immediately straightened their posture when they saw him. "Good afternoon, Mr. Coleman," the receptionist said nervously. Richard barely acknowledged her. His eyes were fixed on the old woman. He smirked. "Let me guess," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "She's trying to cash in pennies?" A few people chuckled quietly. The old woman lowered her eyes. "I only want to see my balance," she repeated softly. Richard laughed harder. Maybe the bank should start serving soup too while they're at it. More awkward laughter spread through the lobby. Even the receptionist smiled nervously. But the old woman remained calm. She didn't argue. Didn't defend herself. Didn't even look angry. And somehow that calmness irritated Richard even more. "You know," he continued arrogantly, "there are banks for people like you. This place handles serious money." The receptionist finally spoke. "Mr. Coleman, please." But he waved her off. No, let's help her. I'm curious myself. How much could possibly be in that account?" $20. The old woman slowly turned toward him. Her eyes were gentle, tired, but strangely fearless. "Money comes and goes, son," she said quietly. Character stays. Richard burst into laughter. Oh, that's rich. Character doesn't buy penthouses. At that exact moment, the receptionist's computer finally finished loading the account details. And suddenly, her smile disappeared. Completely. Her eyes widened. Then widened even more. She blinked once. Twice. Sure she had read something wrong. Her fingers started trembling over the keyboard. The balance displayed on the screen was so large her brain struggled to process it. Multiple zeros stretched across the monitor. Not thousands. Not millions. Hundreds of millions. The receptionist froze. Richard noticed immediately. What's wrong? He asked with amusement. Did she overdraft her account? The receptionist swallowed hard. Sir? She looked at the old woman in disbelief. The woman simply stood there quietly. Richard leaned over the desk impatiently. Then he saw the screen. And the smile vanished from his face instantly. His entire expression changed. His confidence cracked like glass. Because staring back at him was a balance of $482 million. For a moment, the entire world felt silent. Richard blinked rapidly. No, he whispered. The receptionist stuttered nervously. Yes, sir, this account is listed under Evelyn Harper. Several employees nearby heard the name and immediately turned around. One banker nearly dropped his tablet. Because everyone in the financial world knew that name. Evelyn Harper. The mysterious investor who quietly owned massive shares in hotels, hospitals, tech companies, and entire shopping districts across the country. Almost nobody had seen her in public. Photos of her barely existed. And yet, she was one of the richest women in America. Richard's face turned pale. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. The old woman looked at him calmly. I told you, she said gently. Money comes and goes. The receptionist stood up so fast her chair rolled backward. Mrs. Harper, we sincerely apologize. We didn't realize. Evelyn smiled kindly. It's all right, dear. Suddenly the bank manager came rushing from his office after hearing whispers spread across the lobby. His eyes nearly popped out when he saw Evelyn standing there. Mrs. Harper, he gasped. Why didn't anyone tell me you were here? Richard took a slow step backward. Sweat formed along his forehead. The manager shook Evelyn's hand nervously. We would have prepared the private suite immediately. There's no need, Evelyn replied softly. I only came to check my balance. The irony hit the room like thunder. A woman worth nearly $500 million had walked into the bank dressed simply, asking only to see her balance, while a millionaire mocked her without realizing who she was. Some customers quietly pulled out their phones. Others stared at Richard with second-hand embarrassment. But Evelyn never tried to humiliate him. She simply stood there peacefully. And somehow that made the situation even worse for Richard. Because now he looked small. Very small. The manager turned sharply toward the receptionist. Why was Mrs. Harper kept waiting? The receptionist looked terrified. I didn't know. Evelyn gently interrupted. She treated me fine. But then her eyes slowly shifted toward Richard. The lobby became silent again. Richard forced a weak laugh. Well, this is certainly a misunderstanding. Evelyn studied him quietly. You seemed very certain about who I was. Richard cleared his throat awkwardly. I was joking. No, Evelyn said calmly. You were revealing yourself. That sentence hit harder than any insult ever could. Richard's face burned red. People nearby exchanged looks. The manager quickly tried to smooth things over. Mrs. Harper, perhaps you'd like some coffee in our executive lounge? But Evelyn shook her head. I won't stay long. Then something unexpected happened. She turned fully toward Richard. Tell me, she asked softly. Why does wealth make some people cruel? Richard looked trapped. I didn't mean. When I was young, Evelyn continued, I cleaned hotel bathrooms for minimum wage. People treated me exactly the way you treated me today. The room listened carefully. I promised myself something back then, she said. If I ever became successful, I would never use money to measure human value. Richard couldn't even look her in the eyes anymore. Evelyn reached into her purse and removed a small folded photograph. Old. Slightly faded. She handed it to him. Richard looked confused but took it. The photo showed a tiny grocery store from decades earlier. Standing in front of it was a teenage girl beside an older man. That was my father, Evelyn said quietly. We lost everything when I was 16. We lived in our car for almost a year. The lobby was completely silent now. No one believed we would survive, she continued. People laughed at our clothes. They ignored us. Some treated us like dirt. Her eyes locked onto Richard's. And I learned something important. She paused. The people who look weak today may own tomorrow. Richard swallowed hard. For the first time in years, he looked genuinely ashamed. But the story wasn't over. Not even close. Because while everyone stood frozen in that emotional moment, another man entered the bank. And the second he saw Evelyn Harper, he stopped dead in his tracks. Mom. Evelyn turned around slowly. A tall man in his early 40s stared at her in disbelief. The bank manager immediately recognized him. Daniel Harper, CEO of Harper Global Investments, one of the most powerful financial companies in the country. Richard's knees nearly buckled, because he suddenly realized something horrifying. 3 weeks earlier, he had been desperately trying to secure a $1 billion real estate partnership with Harper Global. And the final approval came from Daniel Harper. Daniel walked quickly toward his mother. I've been trying to call you all afternoon, he said. Your phone was off. Evelyn smiled gently. I forgot to charge it. Daniel noticed the strange tension in the lobby. Then his eyes landed on Richard. Instantly, his expression changed. You. Richard forced a nervous smile. Daniel. What a coincidence. What happened here? Nobody answered immediately. The receptionist looked terrified. The manager looked ready to faint. Finally, Evelyn spoke calmly. Just a small misunderstanding. But Daniel wasn't convinced. He looked at Richard carefully. And somehow, he already knew. Did you disrespect my mother? Richard panicked. No. Of course not. We were only joking around. Daniel stared at him coldly. My mother worked harder in 1 year than most people work in their entire lives. Richard tried to recover. I deeply apologize if anything came across incorrectly. But Daniel's face remained emotionless. You know, he said quietly, we were reviewing your proposal yesterday. Richard's eyes widened instantly. And he asked nervously. Daniel looked directly at him. Not anymore. The words dropped like a hammer. Richard's face drained of all color. Daniel, please. My company doesn't partner with people who humiliate strangers for entertainment. The lobby remained frozen in absolute silence. Richard suddenly looked desperate. You can't make a billion-dollar decision based on one misunderstanding. Daniel stepped closer. No. I'm making it based on character. Those same words. Character. The very thing Richard had mocked earlier. And now they were destroying him. Richard looked around the room helplessly. But nobody defended him. Because everyone had seen what happened. Everyone had heard the cruel jokes. Evelyn gently touched her son's arm. That's enough. Daniel exhaled slowly. Then nodded respectfully. For a moment, Evelyn simply looked at Richard. Not angrily. Not proudly. Almost sadly. You are wealthy, she said softly. But you are poor in all the ways that matter. Richard lowered his head. And for once in his life, he had nothing to say. Daniel escorted his mother toward the private elevators while employees rushed to open doors for her. But before stepping inside, Evelyn turned back one last time. To the young receptionist, she said kindly. The girl nearly jumped. Yes, ma'am. Never judge someone by appearances again. Tears formed in the receptionist's eyes. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Evelyn smiled gently. Learn from it. That's enough. Then the elevator doors closed. And just like that, the richest woman in the building disappeared as quietly as she had arrived. The lobby stayed silent for several long seconds. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Richard stood alone in the center of the bank, feeling smaller than ever before. His expensive suit suddenly meant nothing. His luxury watch meant nothing. His money meant nothing. Because in a matter of minutes, everyone had seen the truth behind the image he spent years building. And the worst part, she never yelled. Never bragged. Never tried to embarrass him. She simply revealed who he already was. A week later, news spread quietly through financial circles that Richard Coleman's billion-dollar deal with Harper Global had officially been cancelled. Several other investors backed away soon after. Not because he lacked money, but because powerful people no longer trusted his character. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened inside First National Bank. The receptionist, whose name was Clara, couldn't stop thinking about Evelyn's words. Learn from it. Those 3 words haunted her. For days, Clara replayed the moment in her head. The way she almost dismissed Evelyn. The way she judged her before even knowing her. The shame became unbearable. But instead of quitting, Clara changed. She started treating every customer differently. The homeless man asking for coin rolls. The elderly widow confused about online banking. The nervous immigrant struggling with English. She treated each person with patience and dignity. Months later, Clara received a handwritten letter. No return address. Inside was a simple message. True wealth is how you treat people who can do nothing for you. Proud of your growth. Evelyn Harper. Clara cried holding that letter. She framed it beside her desk. And every single day after that, she remembered the lesson the millionaire woman had taught an entire room full of people. Never underestimate quiet people. Never mock humble appearances. And never assume you know someone's worth based on what you see on the outside. Because sometimes the person wearing old shoes owns the building you are standing in. And sometimes the person laughing the loudest ends up being the poorest one in the room. So if you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more emotional and life-changing stories just like this one. And remember, kindness costs absolutely nothing, but it can reveal everything about who you truly are. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.